Tonight on SportsBuzz, we start off with some Olympics talk before sliding over to the NFL for some free agency. Then we get into some college b-ball as the tourney talk heats up and bring in our NHL analyst to talk about midseason NHL headlines. And of course, we can't forget about the Premier League. All that and more coming up on SportsBuzz.
Welcome to SportsBuzz, alongside Gino Canello and Alex Moore. My name is Cody Jones, and we're going to be talking about the Olympics here to start off the show. So, obviously, Gino, you're going to bring us an update on the gold medal and the medal standings right now.
Yeah, it's been an interesting Olympics so far. The Winter Olympics are always pretty interesting because there's a bunch of sports that you don't typically see very often. In the Summer Olympics you have volleyball and basketball and some more well-known sports, but the Winter Olympics strays away from that a little bit, and we're taking a look at the standings right here. And right now, leading the medal count right now is Germany, followed by Netherlands and Norway. That's the gold medal count, it looks like. But it's been an interesting Olympics. The USA has had a couple slip-ups here and there, but mainly doing well in the areas that they should be.
We're going to bring in Alex now to talk a little bit about the Olympics. What game are you most excited for? What competition?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I think I'm not really sure about excitement, but certainly curiosity. And of course, for me, about excitement, it happens to be hockey. It goes back to the history of the game and how Team USA has had its ups and downs. They've had some really great moments and some really bad moments. And so far, for this Olympics, for the women's and men, has not gone off to a great start. The women's team really played admirably versus Canada, which is considered the best, women's and men's. And they outshot Canada almost 2-1, yet they lost 2-1. So it kind of makes you wonder, all those shots, and yet still stuffed 22, almost every shot, 44 out of 45 for their goalie, who's actually, I think, a third or fourth goalie for that Canada squad, so they're very deep.
Yeah, and it's been interesting in the hockey. There's been many storylines surrounding hockey, especially because of the NHL not allowing NHL players to play in the Olympics. But from what you've seen so far, what's been your favorite game, and what team do you think that comes out of it in the hockey?
It's hard to say what the favorite game is. I really enjoyed that the women's game. Obviously they came up short, but it was a great effort. It stayed 2-1. It seemed like for a really long time. With all the shots that the women's team was getting, you thought at some point they were going to get another one past that goalie. Just didn't happen. But looking at that, I think Canada obviously is still the favorite. Also in the men's, they're the favorite. Of course, you don't want to overlook this Russian team. You can't call them Team Russia, of course, but the athletes from Russia also considered a favorite there, as they have been a favorite, or certainly a heavy contender, since really the 60s, all the way up until now. But don't overlook Sweden. That could be another team that could move up and maybe get a bronze or even a silver, but I think it's going to be Canada, men's and women's, at the end.
Yeah, no, definitely very interesting stuff. We'll look out for that as the tournament goes on.
So outside of hockey, what would you say is your favorite competition in the Olympics?
Well, and this is something I probably wouldn't have admitted to when I was a kid, but as an adult, it doesn't bother me so much anymore. I really like to watch the figure skating, and it comes down to the combination of athleticism and artistry that goes into it. Of course, the focus now more on technical abilities than artistry. You see right there, Adam Rippon, who is really stealing the headlines, at least from the American stories, with certain personal stories that have come up recently here in these Olympics, and then competing very well along with Mirai Nagasu. They both competed very well in the team competition, but of course now it is going to come down to how they perform individually. They all have bronze medals competing in the team tournament, but now Rippon, what's he going to do? Of course, you don't want to overlook Nathan Chen, of course, who also could be there to get a medal for USA, but Mirai Nagasu, first women to land a triple axel in the Olympics, so very exciting there.
No, yeah, absolutely, and I have to say curling is my favorite sport, but figure skating is something that I've been watching, and it's definitely been an interesting sport because, like you said, the triple axel, that's something that's been landed 3 times in the Olympics all time, so definitely interesting to watch there. But now transitioning from the Olympics to now some off-season NFL football. A lot of teams had some rough seasons this year, and a lot of times that falls on the quarterbacks. how much pressure do these quarterbacks that were on bad teams in 2017, how much pressure do they have to succeed in 2018 to, stay on the team and really keep their job?
That's a very good question, and I kind of went through up and down the scales looking at the different teams and who's considered a bad team, who's a cusp team or bubble team, and who are the good teams. Frankly, even for good teams, they could be one quarterback away from being a bad team. But three teams in particular that really stand out. You have the Cleveland Browns, unfortunately, as they continue to be there with quarterback issues. But then I think a team like Indianapolis, a guy like Andrew Luck, who so much promise and got off such a great start in his career, but has had so many injury problems and all kinds of issues going on with the entire team. So there's got to be a lot of pressure on him to not only stay healthy but be a success. Then, of course, the New York Giants. You have some talks about maybe there being a quarterback change coming up, but you have a guy who's a proven winner with 2 Super Bowl rings, just had a really rough season where there were a lot of expectations, but clearly there's a lot of pressure on that guy too, Eli Manning.
And now, switching gears to another quarterback out there, Kirk Cousins is one that's rumored to, kind of be on the move, looking for a new home this offseason. Where do you think makes the most sense for him, both for him as a player and for the team?
Well, there was some early discussion, of course, from the Cleveland Browns, but haven't heard anything anywhere on him and whether he would consider going to Cleveland, of course. But 2 teams in particular that really seem to jump out are the Broncos over there in Denver, or even some team like the New York Jets. But the one that really seems to stand out between those two for me would have to be the Broncos. They got off to a pretty good start this past year, but then they just went on this huge landslide of losses for whatever the reason was. They just couldn't hold it together, and so that kind of broke the whole season for them. But it seems like Denver is a city and a team where you have to play so well so quickly, and so it seems like the experiment with the most recent quarterback, Simeon, is not really working out, and so they may try and go get a guy like Kirk Cousins when we're there.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Thomas from the Browns is doing his best, tweeting at about Kirk Cousins, saying that they love to have him in Cleveland, but obviously that's a stretch as Cleveland's really in a rough spot for anybody to go at this point in time. But transitioning to just free agents in general, minus Kirk Cousins, which free agent do you see having a really big impact on the team that they go to in 2018?
Well, that, of course, it comes down to who may actually move in the end and who may re-sign. Le'Veon Bell, of course, we've heard him talking about how he wants more money, deserves more money. Certainly a lot of confidence coming out of this guy and what I've heard him say on different shows, different interviews. But assuming he doesn't stay in Pittsburgh and go somewhere else, there's also been talk of Cleveland, but something tells me he doesn't want to necessarily go to a team like Cleveland, although I kind of see him being a good fit there. But what if he goes to a team like the 49ers, who has actually been in the discussion and landing a guy like Le'Veon Bell? That team's really starting to look good going into the future with their new quarterback. But then you've got a guy like Sam Bradford. There's a lot of speculation with the quarterbacks in the Vikings. 3 free agents there. Who's going to stay and who's going to go? He may stay with the Vikings or he may go someplace else. The Cardinals are apparently looking for another quarterback right now. Sam Bradford might be a good fit there. And just to kind of narrow it down to a couple of the other top guys, another running back, Rex Burkhead, talk about him from the Patriots. Might be interesting to see him go to Detroit. You've got the new head coach in Detroit. Maybe he'll try and recruit a running back from the same team as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting free agency. A lot of moving parts this season. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Your insight's always great. We're going to have to take a quick break, but coming up after that break, we got some college basketball talk as March Madness heats up, and we got our NHL analyst who's in to talk about the season so far. Stay tuned.
SportsBuzz is brought to you by The Vitamin Shop. With over 300 locations nationwide, shopping has never been easier. Use a convenient store locator or shop online at vitaminshop.com. Welcome back to SportsBuzz. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about college basketball. We're going to go through some of the top teams and talk about some of our predictions for the tournament. Gino?
Yeah, no, it's college basketball is one of my favorite sports to watch, especially this time of year when we get into March Madness. So many different teams that could possibly win it, the upsets. Especially when you get into conference play, it's always a good time watching those games because everybody's fighting for a spot, and those games are always just so close.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's honestly, it's one of the most exciting times of the year in sports, I think, just because, you really just don't know what's going to happen. Let's take a look at the power rankings here, 1 through 10, as you can see on the screen there. Virginia and Villanova at the top, and then some of the other teams towards the bottom. You got Texas Tech right there, so a lot of different, pieces going on there that could definitely be contenders here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just look at that list right there. How many of those teams have you seen in the top 10 over the past 5 years? You know, you got Purdue in there, Auburn in there, Cincinnati in there, Texas Tech in there, Xavier. All those teams are teams that, you know, you don't typically see in the top 10. So it's a very shook up year. Virginia up there at number 1 for the first time since 1982. So it's definitely a big year for, upsets in college basketball. Speaking of which, one of those teams that we did mention in the top 10 was Villanova, and they took on Providence this past weekend in a conference matchup that was huge for the Big East. Pick it up early second half here. Providence working the ball around the paint, then kicks it out to Cartwright for 3. He sinks it. Providence faithful going crazy. They take an 8-point lead. Now a little later in the second half, Providence got the ball again. They dish it down low to Bullock, and he gets a slam, and they go up by 7 points there. Providence is really firing on all cylinders. Bullock gets another slam dunk. He's going nuts. The Providence faithful are going nuts, and everybody's happy there in Rhode Island. Providence with the ball again here late in the second half. A beautiful layup there by the Providence point guard White, and they take a 9-point lead, and Villanova would try and get back into this one. A beautiful slam dunk there by Pascal. Takes it to the hole. They cut the lead to 7, but that would be just about it here as Brunson gets called for a charge. Bullock takes that one. He's doing everything. Providence would take the game 76-71. A huge upset for those in Rhode Island. And we take a look at the score and some of the stats here. Providence winning this one 76-71. They move to 17-9 on the season, and they'll look to improve that record this weekend against Butler. And Villanova drops to 23-3, moves to second in the conference.
You know, I want to talk about, my top 3 predictions here going into March Madness. And, we talked about this at length before the show. We really do feel like there just isn't really a really standout team out there, and it's kind of anybody's field right now to kind of play. So, my top 3 teams looking forward are, I got Michigan, Villanova, and Xavier, and I'm going to break down and kind of talk about, why I went with those. And obviously Michigan is a little bit, they're further out in the rankings. They're, I believe 22 in the nation right now, but I think they're one of those teams that could really, sneak up on people. They have a big test this weekend against Ohio State. I think if they can, take off Ohio State, then they could definitely make that switch. And then, next we got Villanova, who again is, they just came off that upset that we just talked about. But they're one of those teams that they always seem to be in the mix, and I think that you just can't discount them, even despite the loss to Providence. And then, obviously, they're taking on Xavier this weekend. That's the next big game that they got going up on Saturday. And I think Xavier's another one of those teams, we're talking top 4 in the country. We just looked at the power rankings there. I think that they're one of those teams that really could, put up a fight in March Madness.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. But like you said, it's anybody's year this year. They have, you got Michigan who could be in it. You got Villanova who just lost to Providence. Who knows? Providence could be making a run there. It's going to be definitely a very interesting year this year in college basketball. We're going to have to take a quick break, but coming up, we're going to have our NHL analyst in to talk about some of the midseason NHL headlines, and we're going to get you all caught up on the Premier League. All that and more next on SportsBuzz. Welcome back to SportsBuzz. Joining us now is our NHL analyst, Tyler DiPierdomenico. Tyler, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Well, Tyler, it's great to have you here, and we're going to get into some NHL here. There's a lot of things to talk about. And we're going to start off with the trading block. Who are the top 3 players that you think are on the trading block right now?
I got a lot of players right now, but honestly, out of all the top 3, Thomas Vanek is a great player from Vancouver, very journeyman type of player. He's been hopping around all over the place. This is like his possibly 6th team, I believe, and he's been an all-star player still. But then right after that is Michael Grabner. The Rangers are getting ready to sell their whole team. Michael Grabner is one of the biggest names right now. Very fast penalty killer, scores a lot of shorthanded goals. He has 7 empty netters this year. He's 2 away from the world record, who is being held by Mario Lemieux, I believe. And it's just, he's been an all-star type of player for them. A very cheap deal with $1.65 million. Any team can take that kind of deal. Then you have Rick Nash as number 1. Rick Nash has been the top of the trade talk. Very skilled two-way forward, been on the penalty kill type of player. He's always been known as a power forward, but this past couple seasons being diminished a little bit into a changing of a different role. But he's still very strong and a very good player who could be possibly put on with in the Nashville Predators, I believe, is going to be one of the top teams to go after him. And he could be into his second or third line role.
Well, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see how teams, shape up after the trade deadline, and how teams release their players to see if they can, prepare for the future. And the Rangers being one of those teams. But now let's look at some players that are on their teams right now. Give me 2 players that are essential to the teams that they're on right now as they inch towards the playoff.
Right now, I believe Adam Henrique for the Anaheim Ducks is going to be a big-time contributor right now. They go in after him, trade away one of their top defensemen to make sure they can get a player who can just be a great second or third line center if somebody goes down. Ryan Kessler's the number 2 guy right now, but he's very, very injury-prone. If he goes down, Adam Henrique can step right in, be a solid two-way forward. He's already got 20 points on the season with them in 33 games, which is very, very good. He is just going to contribute for them very well, and eventually he's going to be a very star player on that team with Ryan Getzlaf and all those other players. Second is I have Taylor Hall. He is a very skilled player. Never has made the playoffs in his 8 seasons. He's a resurged player on the Devils who had not made the playoffs in a couple seasons. He's really helping them out, pushing them with Nico Heecher and Miles Wood. They are just unreal right now and pushing further and further and getting better and better this season.
Yeah, and Devils definitely a surprise team this year that we're seeing up at the top there. A team we haven't seen up there near the top for a while. But how do you think these players will react to the pressure that's going to be put on them now that their teams are pushing towards the playoffs? You're saying that they're essential to teams. How much pressure is this on them, and how do they react to it?
I believe with Adam Henrique, he's already been there. He went to the Stanley Cup Final in 2012 and beaten down the Rangers in the Game 6 goal. Not my favorite goal. But they ended up he's going to be a very count-on player, I believe, in the bottom 6 role. And for Taylor Hall, I think he's going to feel a little bit of pressure not being in the playoffs for so long. But I think he's going to come in and score a lot of goals, be a very fast player, very contributive. He's very, very skilled, and he's going to want to be in there and get as far as he can in his first playoffs.
Now transitioning from the player aspect to just teams in general, who are 3 teams that you can see making a final push for the playoffs and really making their names known in the playoffs as we head into the final half of the season?
Right now, it's the past Stanley Cup champions for the 2 past seasons, Pittsburgh Penguins. They were very slumping down. They were not doing well, and they just had no signs of life at one point. Now they're starting to come back a little bit. They're coming alive, and right now they're actually in the 2nd place in the Metropolitan with 65 points. And with Crosby coming in and helping them out a lot more, they have Phil Kessel number 1, Malkin is number 2, and Crosby is 3 as their top 3. 66, 65, 65. They're just all gelling out together. They're going to come in together. They might need to add a couple more pieces to get a good playoff run, but they're going to be right there with them. After that, I believe the Dallas Stars. Dallas Stars are going to be a very strong team because they have just signed Alexander Radulov. He's a very skilled player. Hands are unreal. And this is a very, very good resurgence of this team because they missed the playoffs last year. They had bad goaltending, bad defense, bad offense. Everything changed this year with now Ben Bishop being in net, unreal player already. The forwards even added on defense a lot stronger. And the number 1, I believe, is the Toronto Maple Leafs, who they are just all young players, very skilled together, with Austin Matthews already leading the way with 47 points in 49 games. They're going to be a threat in the playoffs. I believe they need one more piece, and actually, I believe Ryan McDonough could be a big name to go to them. But they could need one more defenseman. I think they'll be a Stanley Cup champion team.
Yeah, those 3 teams are definitely powerhouses in the NHL right now moving forward. And, Radulov, I know what he can do as a Canadiens fan and had him on the team last year. But going to the Maple Leafs, do you think they can make a run at the Stanley Cup and win it all?
I believe if they have another piece, a top 4 defenseman, I believe they can do it. I think they can be going up against Tampa Bay Lightning, who I believe can beat them still because they are very skilled up front with everything, every single position, every single line. All of it's very skilled enough to make it to the Stanley Cup final. I think Toronto is right there on the brink. If not, if they can add one more piece, they can be in the Stanley Cup final this season.
Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see. We'll look out for both those all those teams. Thanks for joining us, Tyler. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a quick break, but coming up after the break, we're going to check out who's hot and who's not in the Premier League. Stay tuned. Sports Buzz is brought to you by Berkshire Hathaway. Prudential Home and Sale is now Berkshire Hathaway. New name, new look, and same great company. Welcome back to Sports Buzz for our final segment here. I think we're getting a little Premier League, right, Cody?
Yeah, we're going to dive right into it. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's mid-season, closing in on the end of the season here for the Premier League. It's been an interesting season so far, but, pretty stagnant at the top. There haven't been much changes. Manchester City, as we've been talking about for a few weeks, as we see here, is still up at the top, still dominating. They're dominating the Champions League now, too, with a big win over FC Basel during the week. Manchester United, Liverpool, and Chelsea have pretty much stayed as that top four for the most part. It's been a pretty typical season with the top six staying the same, nobody in between.
And I couldn't help but notice, but Everton, they're looking pretty low on those stat sheets right there.
Well,
number 9.
As an Everton fan, it's been a pretty awful year for us, and we're just trying to. 9 is good for us considering how bad we've played. So just trying to hopefully maybe get in the top 7 despite the poor efforts this year.
So as the season goes on, do you see a major change in these rankings, or do you think this is the way it's pretty much going to play out?
There might be some changes at the 4 spot between Tottenham and Chelsea, but other than that, I think it's going to be pretty much the same. Manchester City, I feel like, is definitely going to finish this season out on top. There's been no question about that since really the first game of the season. They've been terrific, and it's been a great year for Manchester United, despite where they wish they could be up at the top, a little bit closer. And Liverpool is playing exceptionally well. So those 3 teams will definitely be up at the top still. That's all the time we have for you here on this edition of Sports Buzz. Before you go, for all you Shoebies out there, Sacred Heart lost tonight 99-84 despite a huge effort from guard Sean Hone. That pretty much ends their hopes in the race for the 16 seed in the NEC. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you next time.